the TeachPitch podcast. We are very excited to be launching a series of interviews for TeachPitch, a global community of tens of thousands of subscribers from over 205 countries who all have a desire to improve the state of education in this world. And for these interviews, we have selected a number of our subscribers who have achieved great things. And by great, I mean amazing. Think of former presidents, entrepreneurs, fashion designers, hospital builders, non-profit founders, authors, journalists, doctors, etc. And what all our guests have in common is that despite their great success, they've encountered many enormous challenges. So what were these challenges and how did they overcome them? That is what we are going to be talking about here. My name is Aldo and I'm massively looking forward and very grateful you can join us in this journey. So sit back, relax and download the podcast here.
The Accelerator team really worked very hard during the bootcamp stage to make sure that although we had very different projects and very different aims, the skills that we were learning were relevant to all of us. And I think there were a lot of concrete skills that we learned that I wouldn't have got from anywhere else.
Happy Thursday, everyone. I wish you a very good morning, a very good afternoon, or perhaps even a very good evening. Very happy you could join us. Today is a special day because we are presenting to you episode number 40. And I like these round numbers because it feels like half a finish line or a finish line. It's nice to look back. So now we're at number 40. I feel safer to look back at our previously recorded 39 episodes. And when I look back at them, I am genuinely proud of them because I know there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put into these episodes, a lot of hustling, a lot of emailing up and down, a lot of design work, a lot of promotional work has been put in those 39 episodes. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of the team for getting it to this level. But I'm also very much looking forward at the next 40 episodes that will come, or even 50 episodes, or even 100 episodes. I'm in this game for the long run, and I will do whatever I can to present to you new, exciting episodes each and every week. And that is one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that we have succeeded in bringing you sustainable continuity when it comes to these episodes. So pushing out an episode on a weekly basis has really allowed us to develop a sort of a following, but also it has allowed us to crystallize what it is that we want these episodes to be about. So, and I'll say it again, as I've said it before, these episodes are about career challenges. These episodes are about people who, by kind of our global standards, have achieved great things. And they are kind of on a level that for many of us is aspirational. And we basically talk about, well, how did you get there? But also, what were the challenges that you encountered in getting there? And I think those challenges mainly are most interesting to discuss, because you see that in each and every interview, there are challenges. There's no one of my 39 previous guests who told me, well, you know, it was just a walk in the park, nothing happened, and I was just there. I just opened my eyes and here I was. They all say it, of course, in a very different way, but I do think it's fair that everyone has encountered challenges. And it's basically the discussion around how our guests overcame these challenges that hopefully makes it interesting, and that hopefully makes you want to take notes and kind of, hopefully you will also grow from this by listening to these interviews. That is our sincere hope. And we know that you are listening. We see your comments, we see your reviews, we see your ratings, we also receive your emails. So thank you very much for all of that. And I would say keep them coming. We're very happy and proud to have you. Now, episode 40 is taking us back to our education roots. So as you are aware, TeachPitch is born out of a community of education innovators and teachers who basically have a desire to improve the global state of education. And I think the next episode is really a testimony to that. This episode is not an interview with one person, but with three people, to be more precise. Three people who, just like myself, were all part of the WISE Accelerator, and more specifically, the WISE Accelerator, the cohort in 2015. So the next conversation is a conversation with three very bright, very resilient, very strong ladies by the names of Diana Al-Dajani, Joe Besford, and Leonora Dowley. And so I met these three ladies back in 2015 when we were selected by the World Innovation Summit for Education, which is a platform set up by the Qatar Foundation. And we were elected to join their accelerator program. Now, what is an accelerator? An accelerator is a program that helps a startup to develop itself a little faster if it wouldn't have enjoyed the benefits and the support of that specific program. And that is very much what WISE has been doing. It has been offering TeachPitch great support back in 2015, but also after that point. And we're very grateful to them for that. And that is also the reason why we can highly recommend you, if you are an education entrepreneur and if you have a great idea to innovate the state of education, to apply for the WISE Accelerator. So we were a participant to the program back in 2015. Now, obviously, this has grown quite a bit since 2015. So we are now, 7 or 8 cohorts further down the road. But it is still running and it's very much flourishing, I'd say. And I know that the application deadline for the WISE Accelerator program for this year is on April 14th. So if you are interested in potentially joining the program, I'd say go to their website. We'll be sure to include it in our show notes. It is wise.org.qa, and have a look and see what you think. And if you like it, apply. Now, don't take my word for it. Also listen to what my cohort friends have to say. I think it makes an interesting conversation. We spoke about our experience, about our travels, about our speaking opportunities, but we also talk about where there's room for improvement. We didn't just want this to be an advertisement jingle. We really wanted to give you some value to, what is and what isn't for starting education entrepreneurs and an accelerator like the one of WISE. So sincerely hope you enjoy episode 40, the WISE Accelerator.
We are so happy to be partnering with Hee Ha Ho, an interactive video platform that enables teachers and students to easily create amazing clickable videos for learning. Check out heehaho.com for more information and your free starter account. A big thanks to our friends at CZeus Maths Challenger, the only puzzle that effectively boosts your numeracy, critical thinking, and brain power. Go to czeuspunzles.com to get your brain buzzing. And we're so excited to be working with the team at Learning Ladders, the only platform that provides assessment that goes way beyond tracking to effectively support teaching and learning for EYFS, primary, and secondary settings. Go to learningladders.info to find out more.
Yes, yet another episode of the TeachPitch podcast, and a very special one because it's the 40th episode, which is amazing. We started the TeachPitch podcast summer last year, and never in my wildest dreams could I have imagined that I would be at episode 40 with so many interesting guests that have been featured on the TeachPitch podcast. And I wanted to make the 40th episode something special. And I also wanted to make sure that I went back to basically the TeachPitch roots, because the TeachPitch roots, from whichever angle you look at us, are all about education and education technology more specifically. So I invited three people who are very special to TeachPitch, not necessarily because they worked for TeachPitch or with TeachPitch, but because I feel that our journey or the adventure of TeachPitch started a little bit with them. So I have here the great honor to have with me Joe, Leonora, and Diana, and I will get in further detail about who they are and about the great work that they're doing. But Joe, Leonora, Diana, and myself, we were part of the WISE Accelerator in 2015, so 7 years ago. We were young and naive, and we surely needed the money. And we were all part of the accelerator of the World Innovation Summit for Education, which is a great initiative developed by the Qatar Foundation. So Joe, Diana, and Joe are all three education entrepreneurs in their own right. And guys, first of all, I'm so very, very happy to have you here. A very warm welcome to the three of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Great to be with you and celebrate it.
It's truly an international call because we have Joe from South Africa, and then we have Diana calling in from Toronto, and then we have Leonora, and Leonora is on the road. She is at BET, which is a very big education technology conference that takes place in London. But normally, Leonora, you live in Paris, and I am doing my recording here from Scotland. Very quickly, before I let you guys talk, because that's what I want to do, I want to make sure I do proper justice to who you are. So I'm going to very quickly introduce you to our listeners. So Leonora is currently an independent education consultant and head of partnerships at the Learning Planet Alliance. And before that, you were country director for the Varkey Foundation for their programs in Ghana. And in 2015, when you joined the accelerator, you were leading Making Ghanaian Girls Great and Train for Tomorrow, which was a spectacular project that you shaped up with lots of passion and rigor for a great number of years. And we want to hear all about it. You have a very extensive track record in education, including as the head at a school at philosophy and religion. So it's safe to say you know a lot about education and how it's growing. And then we have Diana Al-Dajani. You are an absolute force of nature, first and foremost, and founder and CEO of EduTechnos, an online curriculum that gamifies and innovates the way students are taught in Arabic. And you've been shaping that up with the greatest form of discipline, passion, and enthusiasm for the past 7 years at minimum. And we want to talk all about that, also about all of your travels all over the world, because you show up all over the place. We always laugh about how you are chasing people to get them committed to EduTechnos and your goal. And then last but not least, our warmware lady, Joe Besford. Joe is a director of Green Shoots, an education social enterprise based in South Africa. Green Shoots blends the use of cloud-based resources, online learning analytics, and continuing professional development programs to implement data-informed decision-making across schools and education districts in South Africa. Joe is a determined advocate for the targeted use of EdTech to promote the quality education of all learners. And very interesting about Joe is that she left the UK, where she grew up and where she had a career and where everything was going and growing. In 2007, she said, I have enough, and said, packed her bags and just went to South Africa to change the world there, which I always think is fascinating. And Joe, you've done that on so many levels, not only through Green Shoots, but also personally and privately, which I think is amazing. And, I want to talk all about that. So very, very warm welcome to you guys. So let me start with the first question. Diana, I'm going to ask you first. So let's go back to 2015. When we were selected for the WISE Accelerator. Diana, could you explain to me kind of what your expectations were in 2015 when we met in Qatar?
Well, I can tell you I was looking forward to the experience. I didn't have any clear cut expectations. I was in it for the journey. I knew it was a huge and great opportunity for growth, whether on a personal level or entrepreneurial, my business wise. And I was not disappointed. It actually met and exceeded all of my expectations, which were like very, let's see what's going to happen now. I wanted the opportunity of, well, I'll tell you what. When I first started, before joining the WISE Accelerator, I was validated as an entrepreneur through winning awards as an entrepreneur. But I wanted something that would position Edutechnos in the education sector, not just as an entrepreneur, right? Not just as a business. It's educational. There is something, education entrepreneurship is a bit different animal than the rest of the entrepreneurship ventures, different industries. And I wanted to be aligned with like-minded people, basically.
Thank you. And Joe, if I may ask you, had you heard of WISE before? So the World Innovation Summit for Education, had you heard of it? What made you apply for the accelerator?
We had got an email, and actually my memory is foggy as to how, because we'd never heard of WISE. We had no expectations, but I think it was through a related organization had forwarded it to us and said, this is something you should apply for. And when we looked at it, and I think it was the global perspective that drew us, my co-founder and I, Mark Swartz. We looked at it, and being at the tip of Africa, the chance to participate in a global accelerator, to get world-class mentorship, to get global visibility, to make connections with organizations from an area we wouldn't have been able to meet before, was just too good an opportunity to miss. And like I said, I mean, look, the four of us together, there's no way the four of us would have met if it hadn't been through the accelerator. And what we've learned from each other, just the four of us, has been immense. But the actual chance to participate and this is what I'll say of WISE, they are a truly globally representative community. Often global communities might be focused in a particular cohort of a geographical cohort, but WISE is truly global from all over the world. It gives a voice. I mean, both Leo and I came from African-based projects. So it's giving a voice to everybody and valuing the input of everybody. So yeah, I loved it. And from us, that was what we wanted to learn, but also show we had things to contribute from our perspective.
Great. And Leonora, for you, it was a little bit different because you were incubated in another big organization, so the Varki Foundation, mainly active in United Arab Emirates, I believe. So what was it like for you to come into Qatar with your Ghanaian project?
Thanks, Aldo. I think similarly to Diana and Joe, I didn't really know what to expect when I arrived. And actually, normally accelerators, I was in a slightly different position because normally accelerators are really for entrepreneurs and people who are trying to set up businesses and maybe find seed funding or find later stage funding. And my project was a not-for-profit initiative that was then looking for innovative ways to generate revenue in order to make it more sustainable and to help it along its journey. And I was really amazed, actually, that with the application I wrote that we were accepted as an accelerator project, because I was expecting the answer to be no, we're an accelerator, we're an incubator, and that's not really how we work. And I think that there were two things. One was the accelerator team really worked very hard during the bootcamp stage to make sure that although we had very different projects and very different aims, the skills that we were learning were relevant to all of us. And I think there were a lot of concrete skills that we learned that I wouldn't have got from anywhere else. I was living in Ghana. I was very focused on my project and trying to deliver it. And I was quite isolated in a way. I didn't have time for kind of learning opportunities. And they gave us a space to come away from that and come together and learn. And actually, so my next move after that was to move into the water sector, and I was the chief operating officer of a social impact water company. And I think a lot of the skills that I learned during the accelerator, I couldn't have done that job if I hadn't been there. But I mean, the other thing, both of you have said it, this group of people, we're still in touch 7 years later. We're doing very different things, but I think that we there was something about the way the initial bootcamp was set up that allowed us to get to know each other in a way that was much more than the work that we were doing. And the support that we have shown each other over the years, and the fact that we're still talking 7 years later, is probably more valuable than the concrete skills that I know. So I think Joe's nodding, so at least she agrees.
No, that's very true. We kept in touch. We have our own WhatsApp group, and we harass each other regularly with loads of funny jokes and pictures and things about where we are. That's for our cohort, though. I know that other cohorts might not be as close. Of course, I hope they are, that they've found friends through the accelerator as well. But in our case, most definitely. And yes, throughout the years, we've learned a lot from each other. On many levels. We speak to each other regularly, and I think that's really, you're right, very much the value of the exchange, which we might have not expected in the very beginning. So that's also my questions, like, the expectation kind of for us at the beginning of, okay, here's what we're going to get out of this versus what we actually got, which I think is very important. I want to talk about highlights. Diana, could you, because it's 7 years, and I know the kind of WISE is I think when we started, it was an annual summit, and then they also have these tracks within other big summits, and we were invited to loads of them. I remember going to Qatar and going to Madrid and going to Austin and London. So many places, just to name a few. Diana, is there any highlight for you that stands out? Like on one that you said, like, wow.
Absolutely, Aldo. The whole experience is literally one of a kind experience for any entrepreneur in the education sector, because don't forget also, you forgot to mention, we've met in Mumbai. We both got an award from Mumbai, and it was really surreal experience meeting Aldo in Mumbai. So that, like, the whole experience, the platform for travel, it's not just traveling. Traveling is, it's like for business, it's not as comfortable as if you're going for tourists, as a tourist, right? Because you still have the business to run. You're still trying to do what's happening in the conferences and all of that. But this travel platform is not just an eye-opener. You mingle and you rub shoulders with a diverse set of talents, a set of skills, ideology in terms of education. And I remember there was like in a span of a couple of months, I was with you guys in South by Southwest in the States. Then we went to EdTech X, I think, in London, and then went to Mumbai. And it was like this. And of course, what was I doing like locally in GCC area and the Middle East? And I was just seeing how education objective was different for every conference. Of course, every conference is different. But what struck with me is in the States, they were focusing mostly about the innovation, the future, and how can we help the students. And that, again, that was back then. Now is a completely different conversation. But what I want to get away from this experience is how every country and how every segment of this world has different perspective and different take on education. And when we were in London, there were two main conversations there: literacy and math, and the EdTech solutions for literacy and math. And then when I went to Mumbai, the conversation was about education is about making the one person good person, and then if that one person is a good person, then the family will be a good family, then there will be a good neighbor, then it will be a good country, and then the country will become a good world. And that statement struck with me. So like I can summarize the whole highlights as meeting all these people, interacting with them, and just being also a member of a community. Leonora and Joe mentioned the global aspect of it, but it's not just you go and then you disconnect. You're still part of this community. It's like a family. And here 7 years later, we're still talking, and we've met in Qatar, like back in December. It's like, what? It's like we're still in the same zone. It didn't feel that it's been 7 years, right? And it was very interesting. Also, one of the biggest things that I've always enjoyed it through these travels with you guys is the morning breakfast, the morning coffees. This is when we reflected. Do you remember? And we would have coffee. We would talk. I've learned a lot from each one of you. Each one of you had impacted what I'm doing today in the business one way or another. So this is a thank you for this friendship. And this is the main highlight for me.
Okay, you mentioned too many highlights, Diana, but I'm happy you did. And you are my highlight as well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. Joe, what would be your highlight? Do you have one isolated, or would you be more on the Diana side, like, well, it's the entire experience and the people? And is there one thing that stood out for you?
Aldo, of course I'm going to be on the Diana side. I'm never going to give you one highlight.
There you go.
You know us too well. It's the learnings from a diverse community. It's not just educators. The learnings, challenging your perspective, challenging your ideas. It's like, wow, I'd never thought of that. Because it's not just the education world WISE drew in. I think also the value is benchmarking. It's like Leonora said, she was in Ghana, she was focused on her program. We actually realized we're not doing that badly. We can hold our own in a global community. We actually realized what we were doing was truly innovative, it was sustainable, and it gave Mark and I the ability to say, yes, let's push this. We can hold our own on a global stage, which was a huge, it really helped us go forward. The other thing is the accelerators for the year, but as we keep saying, the value is ongoing. The community that you're part of this 7 years on. So we've all been involved with WISE going on, the Emerging Leaders programs. We've been plowed back into the accelerator. We've contributed at conferences, in podcasts, which shall be nameless. We've written, but we have been able to gain and give. And I think that's the other thing, is it's not a one way. This accelerator, you've all heard, we've learned from each other, but we were able to share our learnings. And I think that is the also, you often go in an accelerator to get, but the nature of the community that WISE is a part of, you're expected to give to. And I think that was a huge thing. Plus the breakfast, we changed the world in those breakfasts, guys.
We surely ate a lot during those breakfasts, a lot more than you're supposed to, kind of, because it is like this hotel buffet breakfast. Then I'm like, oh goodness. And they were like, oh, it's time for lunch. But yeah, I know what you mean. It was very wholesome. It was very nice to sit there and to talk and to have the opportunity to make those plans. And I agree with you, Joe. I like what you said about we could hold our own on a global platform. For me, when we had that lunch in Madrid with Sheikha Hind, so the chair of I believe of the Qatar Foundation, the princess of Qatar, so to say, and that she sat, I believe she sat next to you, Diana, and I was sat next to Diana, and we were like, oh my goodness, what are we going to say? And she knew personally so much about us. And I was like, wow, what do you know about this platform that I started in the UK, right? So we were under a microscope for people, who had global knowledge about education solutions, who surely had better things to do than, knowing about us. And here we were, right? So here we were singled out in the most positive way of the word. I really like that, right? And you're right. It is an encouragement to continue and to persevere. So that's very much true. I want to go to challenges, because that's what this podcast is about. It's about personal as well as professional challenges, and maybe tie the challenge a little closer to perhaps what the accelerator has to offer, if you can. So Leonora, as country director of your project at the time, what was your biggest challenge? So forget about the accelerator for a while, but was there a specific challenge, and did you feel that an accelerator could solve that challenge? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so as you say, I was in Ghana kind of on my own. I mean, obviously I had a lot of colleagues, but I was not from Ghana and never will be. I'm English. And I was living in a country that wasn't my own, and I was trying to establish something meaningful with impact in education. And I think the challenges were kind of twofold. I had like personal ones and professional ones, and it made me think, whilst Joe and Diana were talking about the highlights, how closely those are linked and how they've kind of been continued to link even since I left the work that I was doing there. And so the two that I was going to highlight is I was on my own, and it's really difficult sometimes to be far away from your family and the friends that you have, even if you're creating new relationships and things in the country that you're in. You can get really deep into your work. You can kind of forget that anything exists outside the work that you're doing. And I think the accelerator was, we've talked a lot about the connections that we've made, and I think the accelerator really helped remind me that there are people outside my very small, in a way, sphere of influence who are doing things that I can learn from, even if they're not directly related. And I think the four of you, that's very helpful, but the accelerator more widely as well. And I think that's something that carried on. So, we all went to WISE in December. We've been part of the kind of the WISE family for a long time. In the work that I do now with the Learning Planet Alliance, we're looking at learning ecosystems, and we're working with WISE. We're also looking at very similar themes to us, and so there's been a lot more than just the accelerator. WISE is a huge network of people. In fact, the director of the Learning Planet Alliance was with WISE right from the very beginning, setting it up. So the worlds continue to collide, and so although one of my personal challenges was sort of feeling quite isolated, I think that WISE, in the beginning, the accelerator, but now the ensemble of things that they offer has really helped that. Kind of professionally, it's the same but different. So I'm not Ghanaian, and I was in a position where I was in a country that where I wasn't born, running something that I was hoping having impact. And I think in the beginning it was very helpful to have our funding. A lot of our funding came from the UK. And I think it was very helpful to have somebody who sort of had a foot in both camps, who was living in Ghana but had links to the UK. But I realised that after a while, it was not the right thing for an English person to be running something in a country where there were Ghanaians who were better qualified, exceptional people who should be running it instead. And so I think, the professional challenge, which is, I think, something we discussed actually really quite early on in one of the first boot camps about leadership and who leads and how you manage processes that maybe you're not the best person to do it. And it was kind of a spark of that thinking during the boot camp. And so I handed the program over. It's now being run by Ghanaians, and the Ministry of Education in Ghana has actually taken it on. They've taken over the infrastructure. They've embedded it into one of the departments. So in terms of sustainability, it's been really great. But I think that professional challenge was something that I did consider through the accelerator process and definitely helped clarify my thinking.
That's great. That's a great one. So it took you out of isolation a little bit more. It gave you more info, more people to talk to, not only then, but also now. I understand it because you say, these worlds continue to collide. People join in another format, other capacity. So you keep in touch, even though you've changed your professional goals. You're still part of WISE. And I like that. And I would tend to agree with you.
Yeah.
Enough with the positive. Let's be very critical here. Where do you think, when we joined WISE, where do you feel there was room for improvement, right? Do you feel there was at any point that you say, well, here's where the accelerator could have done better. Here's something that I would have thought they would have organized properly and whatever more. I feel we owe that feedback to him. And Joe, just for you, a little warning, stay respectful here, right? So, no, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. No, but is there anything?
It's a good thing you're the other side of the globe, Aldo.
Yeah. No, but is there anything, and I'm just asking as a question to the three of you, because but is there anything that you feel like, okay, as an accelerator, they could have done better doing this or doing that? Maybe they have. We don't know, right? It's 7 years ago. So any feedback on that?
So I think, although I said at the beginning, so I was actually pushed by somebody else to apply for the accelerator, and I didn't think it would be the sort of a space for a not-for-profit. But actually, in our cohort, there were 2 who were kind of not-for-profit and 3 who were for-profit. No, maybe the other way around. Maybe it was 3 and 2. And I think it was extremely useful for me to be in a room with people who were business minded, and really it made me think completely differently about how I was running my organization. And so in the first instance, it was great. I think that as you run an accelerator program over a year or a couple of years, it's potentially useful to perhaps separate those people out again so that you can give them slightly more targeted feedback on the structures of their own organizations and how they might, they are different worlds, they do speak to different people, and although crossover is very helpful, in the first instance, potentially down the line, it's useful to be a bit more targeted. But I mean, I hope I've made it clear that I thought the process was great, and I definitely learned more than, I have more compliments and criticisms of how the whole thing played out.
Yeah, no, but you raise a valuable argument, and I think we've all also fed that back to WISE, and I think they've acted on it accordingly. That we were a mixed bag of charitable organizations or not-for-profits and for-profits, and you have a different setup. Therefore, you have different incentives, and so you cannot kind of support with a one-size-fits-all approach. And I do believe they're giving next to the kind of general approach through plenary sessions, they also provide customized consultant support. And kind of mentorships from organizations who are of the same DNA as you. I think that has kind of developed.
Yeah, and we were one of the early ones, and I think that it was part of the reason that I applied. I think it was a really brave thing to do because other people don't do that, and if you don't try, you don't know.
No, 100%.
We certainly got a lot out of it in any case.
Any more things that you would say there's room for improvement here, or anything that you kind of among all the things that we got, anything that you basically missed? Diana, I know you're part of some other accelerators now, specifically in Canada, which sounds very exciting. Do they have a very different approach from WISE, or is it very similar?
Well, that's a very good question, because I'm actually setting up a meeting to discuss ecosystems with the University of Toronto experts in this matter, because it is very intriguing to me, again, as I said, how education and accelerators are also, there's an element of education in there. How would you teach entrepreneurship education to entrepreneurs, basically? And if I'm going to think a bit about it, like compare and contrast, I'll tell you actually WISE Accelerator would be on a different level in terms of the travels, that the traveling opportunities that we get, meeting people from diverse and all over the world on a global level. Here we're talking about locally. It's a different, it's not fair to compare these two, but I can tell you this. Throughout the whole WISE Accelerator experience, I've enjoyed the networking. And I think all of us share this pleasure where you meet different people, you learn, you exchange information, you help, and all of that. But if I'm looking right now at the new generation of entrepreneurs, I'm seeing like they would need some kind of training, how to network effectively. I still go to conferences where people would just hand out business cards or just LinkedIn on the spot, and there is no part, the part of the conversation, getting to know that person is missing. But I haven't noticed that before. But now, if we're going to talk about what can be done, I'm not sure if they're doing it right now or not. But this is an area I think that is. It's new, or maybe it has been there before, but I didn't notice it. But now, the more I'm dealing with more entrepreneurs in conferences, especially in COVID, with everything is virtual and all of this thing, networking got harder. So I think this is the extra layer of training or education that can be in. Like, for example, I'm just going to mention the example when we were in South by Southwest in Texas, and I was talking about Arabic. And I was like, I say Arabic and everyone just shut down. You're in the States. Who cares about Arabic? And I had a morning coffee with Jo and she's like, change the Arabic and say a foreign language such as Arabic. And I was like, okay, let's change that in my conversation. And the conversation sparked, and then the conversation will keep going on, and you start learning from people around you. So like that kind of mentorship from Jo helped the whole experience to change, the whole networking experience to change. And I think this is very valuable. Oh, mentorship as well. We've received mentorship from everyone, but I'm not sure if it was like, what do you call it, systematic. It was not systematic, right? I think maybe systematic way. They did amazing in connecting us. I would go in the conferences. If there are a couple of people I wanted to meet, I would send an email. Is it possible to do introductions? And they would do amazing with that. They helped a lot. I don't know, Joe, did you do that too? I used to do a lot of that. If you can help me with the connection here, I need to meet that person. And that was magic. That was a magic wand. Like if it wasn't for WISE Accelerator, what would be the chances of me being introduced to that person from a legit accelerator that actually legitimize your endeavor in this education entrepreneurship journey? And it's not easy. It's hard. So any support is awesome.
No, you're very right, Diana. I think the network is also kind of the most valuable here, kind of the thing that we're all after. And there are two sides to the coin here, because I remember they're so strong in terms of network in introducing you to people who are influencers in education, and in who are you're part of the most renowned universities in the world, or have set up enormous organizations for teachers or schools or students, kind of practically globally, which I think is marvelous. But I do remember that would be kind of my feedback to them, that we had a investors presentation in Madrid, and this ties in what Leo said, that we were kind of going to talk to investors and we had our pitch decks ready. And I think the organization genuinely felt like, okay, we can make this happen, but it didn't really go anywhere because there were no investors effectively. And I think this is where I would suggest, or, the feedback that I think WISE has also taken to heart is like, you don't have to be everything for everyone. It's okay if you were that network and if you help with the connections in that network, rather than that you say that you're kind of a gateway to loads of investors if you're not there yet, right? Because now effectively the presentation that we did and that we were all quite nervous for was basically to a non-audience, right? I remember poor Tuhami was there, who was the coordinator then, and I think 2 or 3 people who were lost. But other than that, there wasn't really anyone who were investors. Well, we had been kind of very nervously saying, "Oh my God, we're going to talk to investors," and there was no one there. But we say this with all the love in the world, right? Yeah.
But Aldo also like they gave us access to private equity experts, where they explained what kind of presentations do you need, what investors are looking for, and all of that. And if we're going to talk, if something else can be done, is help us draft this whole thing the right way. That would have been very helpful as well. We would have much more confidence if we actually got the critiques and all of this to do that. Oh, actually, they did that at the end, right, Aldo?
I think we were accelerated twice, I think, because of it, because we also had to support the year after. And then Diana, we didn't receive that support kind of on this investors pitch level. But for our year at that moment, it still needed to come to fruition, which is okay, right? This is not criticism. WISE is not that old. It's 10 years old. So it's not that they had everything down from the beginning, but that was just our experience at the moment. And I'm sure they've dealt with it accordingly. We're just old people talking about the olden days, and I'm sure this has evolved kind of to a higher level now. It was just back in the day. That's how it was. Yeah. Now I want to talk about the future, and I want to talk about the future of each of your initiatives. Joe, could you tell me what's next for Green Shoots? Where are you guys at? What are you doing, and how do you see, what's 2022 and 23 going to look like for you?
It's definitely scaling. I mean, just to give you, when we were at WISE in 2015, I'm trying to remember how many schools we would have had about 2015, perhaps 100 plus, and I can be corrected. By now, we're over 800 schools that we are supporting in different areas of South Africa with a a fantastic partnership with the Western Cape Education Department to really deploy this way of primary maths education. So this model is scalable. It works across wide cohorts of schools. So it's really right. Let's let this, if it's working, let's get this to more children. So there are, it's being, the system is saying this is value. The education system saying this is of value to us. This is helping us to really, particularly in a post-COVID environment where there are huge, diverse experiences of learning under COVID. How do we actually support learners coming from different learning losses in maths? So the ability to say, look, this works, it's been implemented at scale, the education department is really finding value in it. Let's get this out here. Let's scale. Our heart of green shoots is always Africa. That's why I was so delighted when WISE had the Ghana conference. Sidebar, it's time for another Africa conference. Just saying, WISE, if you're listening. Because there's so much coming out of Africa at the moment. So it's not even the technology. You introduced me as Miss Warmware. It's the things that you put in place to make the technology tools really impact, and it's being able to share that and to scale that. The tool is never the solution. It's never the solution. But we've done 10 years of learning how to scale and how to embed and how to add value to an existing system, not to create a parallel system. So that is one of the things going forward. The other thing is then to look at just scaling up for looking at what we can do just to help the learners as they move in their journey. We're creating a cohort of learners who are excited about maths from primary school, who actually feel maths is for them. They could achieve in maths. What can we do to link and support those learners going on so that it actually starts being seen at the higher tertiary education? So that's just something to look at. But actually, my colleague Mark says we work ourselves out of a job. If we're sustainable, you shouldn't need us anymore because it's been embraced and there's new areas to work alongside. So actually, we should work ourselves out of a job because our phrase is Africa's waiting. We can share these learnings, share these solutions. So that is the green shoots, and not my mantra. This is the green shoots mantra.
Nice. Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Joe. And if you want to know more about Green Shoots, then you should go to
greenshoots.edu.co.za or Twitter. Twitter is wonderful.
100%. And we will be sure to include the URLs to each of your organizations in our show notes as well. So thank you so much, Joe, for talking a little bit about that. I want to go very quickly to what's next for each of you, Leo and Diana. Leo, if you would like to go first.
Thanks, Aldo. So the projects in Ghana have now been taken over by the Ministry of Education, which is really exciting. It's what we were working towards all the time. We were trying to demonstrate that we were having impact. We were collecting data. We were really evaluating what we were doing. We were setting up kind of strong teams and systems. And so that project has been taken over by the Ministry of Education and is now serving children across the whole country, and teachers and school leaders. And it was particularly helpful during COVID because we set up an infrastructure that allowed remote teaching and learning to take place. So we were kind of accidentally anticipated the fact that would need to happen. So I think, to Joe's point, we did ourselves out of a job, and that was the goal. And I wholeheartedly support that idea. And so since then, what I've been doing is I've been working with other people who want to transform education for the world that is coming, that we don't really know. We know bits of it, but we don't really know yet. I've been working with the Learning Planet Alliance, which, as I said, was set up by somebody who used to work with WISE as well, which is it's a global alliance of educational stakeholders around the world, and it acts as a kind of a middle ground. So it's like a garden for people to come together. We're the gardeners of this middle ground for people to come together, to connect, to co-create, to discuss, challenge, implement, scale up impactful ideas. And we design collaborative programs to serve the kind of the shared goals of trying to have local and global impact, trying to work together to learn how to take care of ourselves, of others, of the planet. And I think it's not a direct, I did this and then this is the next project that came out of it. It's more that I was working in one area and I could see how having an ecosystem that brought in students and teachers and school leaders and government officials and other people working from NGOs and big networks and businesses and social enterprises, I could see how that could work on a small scale. And so what I'm trying to do now with the team at Learning Planet is do that on a global scale.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Leonora, and very helpful. And kudos to you for handing it over so graciously to the Ministry of Education, but also diving into this new adventure, right? You could have also said, well, I've had it with education. No, you're sticking with it, which has my admiration and good for you. Diana, what's next for EduTechnos?
Okay, Aldo, thank you for the question. So right now we're still supporting local Arabic curriculums with the digital resources, but because of the 10 plus years journey in figuring out how can we make learning Arabic easier and more fun, we basically want to implement the solution into different channels. Like right now we're doing online tutoring, in-person tutoring, and we can take it, the dream, the next, which is for in 20 years, as you were saying, is basically to be able to change all the Arabic curriculums from KG to grade 2 to adopt this new model. And we're not going to do it alone. We're leveraging our relationships with the University of Toronto to do it together. And it's going to be like a big mountain to climb and a big challenge. Looking forward to tackling it. Also, I'm looking forward what's next right now. And this Saturday, we're officially launching our robotics operation as well, teaching coding in Arabic. And also our robot will be teaching Arabic as well. And there are different channels. Again, we're taking this solution and getting multiple channels so that we create an impact and to, as Joe was saying, to scale the impact. Why just keep it with just EduTechnos operation? We want to scale it as fast as possible, and hopefully that we can realize the vision of Arabic is the easiest and the funnest language to learn. Hopefully.
Wow, there's so many things in there, and it sounds so adventurous, and congrats on getting it on this level, and this institutional partnership with the University of Toronto sounds amazing. So I wish you all the best with that. Yeah, and then to my very last question, which I ask all my guests, but now I have 3 of you. So for anyone who wants to answer the question, basically, I always ask the same questions to hopefully inspire our audience. One is around reading. So for any of you, any book that has really helped you on your way in your development as a founder of an education organization, anything you would like to share? It's like, well, go ahead, Diana.
From my readings and everything, there's one book that actually can be applicable to all phases, or most of them at least, which is called The One Thing. It talks about how a domino can knock down another domino that is double of its size. And if you roll that to 30 dominoes, you can reach the moon in height. And the whole book has tools how to identify this domino, the small one that you need to keep like pushing and clicking so that once it falls, the effect and the impact is exponential. And this can be on personal level, entrepreneurship, business, professional, whatever. And this is the one book that I would recommend.
That sounds like a fascinating book and great recommendation. Thank you so much, Diana. The One Thing, and we'll be sure to include that in our show notes later on so people can find it. And yeah, the very last question. Now let's turn the tables. This is no longer the TeachPitch podcast, but your podcast. Is there any guest that you would like to say, okay, this person is who you need to talk to. This is the person I want to talk to, the person who has inspired my socks off. And by the by, it can be someone who has unfortunately passed, as well as someone who's alive, as well as someone is in the future. I had a guest a few episodes back who said that he wanted to talk to his great-great-grandson, which I thought was an amazing answer. So sorry for that one. If you wanted to say that one, unfortunately that one has already been taken. But any guess you could think of?
I'll dive into that one. And this is not at all influenced by the fact that I'm a lifelong Liverpool fan. But I would love to have Jurgen Klopp on a podcast because he is committed to a culture of excellence. He's managing diverse individuals and he's managing them as individuals and he's getting a coherent team. And I would just love to pick his brain because he's very quiet to the outside. So we don't know, but whatever he's doing is working magic with people because he keeps it personal. He doesn't air his dirty laundry. And I just love to pick his brain. I would love to pick his brain to say, how are you keeping such diverse characters all focused, working together as a team for excellence and the demands of everything and being such a humble man? I would love to pick his brain. And then just because it's me and I never give one answer, when I heard it was somebody who'd passed, I would love to have interviewed Arch Desmond Tutu. I was privileged to hear him speak live. His uncompromising humanity. He wouldn't give in, but he did it with humour. I would have just listened to him for days. So yeah, that they were my 1 and 1 plus 1.
Wonderful recommendations. Thank you so much, Joe. Yeah, I mean, lots of things to think about here, not only for your podcast guests or the reading, but also kind of all the previous answers you've given us about WISE, the accelerator, but also your organizations. I would like to thank you very, very much for coming on this program and celebrating the 40th episode with me. I want to wish you all the very, very best in all the great work that you're doing. Keep on keeping on, as I'd like to say. And thank you also for all the great work you have already done. So my hats off to you. We are friends. We're going to stay in touch. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us, Aldo.
Thanks very much, Aldo. It was lovely. See you soon.
Congratulations, Aldo. Just also because you're the one person who hasn't been celebrated here. What you have taken with TeachPitch and even this podcast and the value that it's had, fantastic, absolutely fantastic and well done. And keep growing, keep sharing, keep challenges. And sorry, Aldo, you're stuck with us. Take care.
Take care. Thank you so much, guys. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you liked this episode of the TeachPitch podcast, then it would mean the absolute world if you could share it with your friends and or give it a short review on your preferred podcast platform. The more you share your ideas about these interviews, the more people will find out about them. So do let us know what you think. We'd be very, very grateful.
Special thanks to Kevin MacLeod for our beautiful theme music, Le Grand Chase. This podcast was produced and edited by Natalie Piles. Project coordination by Inva Cheney.